with my hands. I want to get there. I want to do something. And so I think this is fabulous because my first degree is in math, and then the graduate degree is in career and technical education. So I'm combining, like, listen, guys, you're not gonna get too far without math, but then you also need to be able to do.
Okay, so you're going to point at two different angles, right?
You need a skill. My husband said to me the other night, he said, he doesn't think that he said every student in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, when they leave school, should leave with a trade.
Okay.
Without exception, without exception. And it's not who determines what that skill is, because my nail technician girlfriend, she raking it. My hair raking it. You understand that? So it doesn't matter what it is. It does not matter what it is. The lady who did my, and I just advertising me, the lady who did my hair, she never went to school, but she's got the skill. And my dear, nobody does it like the craft and the passion that she has. And she does it, she just works and takes appointments. And I'm like, okay, I've been to school all this time, and I can't make the kind of cash and she only 18. She's been doing it now for about 5 years. The child is 18 years old. I have a master's, and I'm bossing you, no, recording this. But what I'm saying is, in this environment, I challenge us as instructors to enhance, improve, engage them, and don't. One of the things we have to do with marketing, and boss, I'm going to see if I can go on your payroll, so I can do some marketing for career and technical education. Because, a little extra, the bonus. Because let me tell you what needs to happen in the country. We need to rebrand CTE. Because people think CTE is for the set who ain't passing no class, to set the remedial students, the person who can't read, can't write, grab them and throw them into BTVI and let them see if they can do something. No, that's not it. So what we need to do is go on a marketing strategy that, guys, guess what? They're all skilled people making more money than the doctors. All right, so I think that's a branding. We can talk about that later. So I want to thank, and Mark is going to speak to that, because it is the stigma that is attached has to be broken, and so that the power and the talent in these students can be released, and the Bahamas can benefit from all these talented people. I will the most certified person in here to speak on NCCER, our adopted BTBI instructor, Mark Humes from Valencia College.
All right, everybody can hear me good? I believe everybody on Zoom should be able to hear me as well. All right. Again, my name is Mark Hughes. I am with Valencia College out of Orlando, Florida. I've been with Valencia now going on about 6 years. Kind of tell you a little bit about my story and how I got to where I am today. It's kind of a different journey than traditional people that work at our college. You guys, a lot of you work in high schools, right, or middle schools in the Department of Education. Well, that's where I got my start in construction. I went through a trade school starting my junior year of high school, and we actually built houses between my junior and senior year. And that's where I really developed the passion for construction. But before that, I worked with my grandfather, who built furniture, always was kind of in and around construction. And I got out of high school and I joined the United States Army and did 4 years there, got out of the Army, come back home, worked in the mining industry, worked underground as a coal miner, and never really got back into construction. Kind of stayed in the mining industry. I spent some time with the fire department back home as a firefighter. And then the economy kind of started going up and down in the mining industry, and I said, you know what, I'm tired of it, I'm moving to Florida. Because my parents have been there for about 20 years. Came down to Florida, leaned back on some of those equipment experience that I had, and I started working in land development. And then met this young lady over here, Ms. Foreman. Christina is my managing director of continued education at the college. She called me up and said, hey, we are starting a construction program at Valencia College. You know, would you be interested in maybe being a coordinator, implementation coordinator for it? I'm like, well, what's that mean? And she's like, well, you'll go pick up lumber and, get stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. That's easy, right? I'll go pick up lumber and all that. So we get there and she's like, well, we want you to take this class through NCCER. And I'm like, what is NCCER? I don't even know what this is at the time, right? So she's like, no, I want you to sit through this training, this craft training session, just in case something happens, you can fill in as an instructor. I'm like, all right, because I have those skills. So I go through the class and we sit through it, and then we go to the last day of the class and we do a teach back. And I had to come through and I had to figure out a 5-minute presentation on something to do with construction. So I decided my 5-minute presentation was going to be to teach my students how to read a tape measure, right? So Christina comes walking in. I was nervous enough with that. Well, then her boss comes in, my big boss, my assistant vice president, Carolyn McMorrin. She walks in the door. Now, granted, I haven't taught anything. I've never had the opportunity to sit in a formal setting. Probably shouldn't even be at the college the way I am. So I sat through it, I go through the training, do my teach back, and Christina and them come up to me afterwards and was like, no, I think we want you to teach with the program instead of coordinate. So I'm like, yeah, what's the money look like? That's the first thing. What's the difference in pay? That's what I'm looking at. So, she tells me and I get into it. So we go, and I think that's 2 weeks prior to the start of our very first class. All right, so I'm hitting the floor running. And we get to our new classroom, which is a storage building pretty much that the college had extra, and I walk in and it's nothing but a concrete floor, and that's it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. We ain't got no furniture, we don't have no tools. And I was supposed to be teaching a construction class, right? So very early on in that program, we decided, you know what? Our first project for our students is we're gonna make them build their own desks, right? Solves a problem for me, gives them some hands-on skills. It's a win-win situation all the way around, right? So that's taken care of. Next was the tool situation. So I'm bringing tools from my house. Another instructor's bringing tools from their house. Christina's meeting me at Home Depot because she's got all the money at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm saying, hey, I need to buy this before I go to class because I need it today to teach. We're sitting in class and everything, we lay it out on paper what that class is supposed to look like. Well, on paper in real life don't always line up the same way, right? So there's days that I go through the training and there's 2 hours left before I'm supposed to cut them out. I don't have anything to do. So I'm making stuff up. I'm shooting at the hip on some of this stuff right now. This is this is our first class. But some of those times I look back at now and it was really beneficial to have to walk into that situation like that because it made me, as an instructor at the time, think on my feet. It made me say, you know what, we're gonna have fun today. How are we gonna have fun? We got into where we were teaching them to use tape measures. Well, how do I use, without sitting here showing them a slideshow of, 16ths and 8ths and quarters and all that. So you know what? We'll split them up into groups. You 5, you're gonna go measure this room over here. You 5 are gonna measure this, you 5 are gonna measure that. Come back to me with how much square footage you got. So then they come back to the classroom, and I gotta think on my feet. All right, if we were gonna tile this room in here, how many 6x6 tiles do I have? So I was able to take that and switch it and use that as a learning opportunity for these students. But it was very interesting early on when we did our programs like that. And then over the years, of course, we got the timing down. We knew what we could do in our programs and what we couldn't do in our programs. I had the opportunity to be moved up to lead instructor at the time, which was really interesting. I think at the time I had 2 other full-time instructors that I worked with, and probably about 10 adjunct instructors at the time that I would kind of work with to make sure they're doing what they need to do, kind of help our program manager out at the time. And then about 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to move up to program manager. And during that time, we took what we had started, a very small construction class, that core construction, which is what you guys will be teaching. We have then grown that into the different levels of different NCCER. So started off with that core. We now have, we don't even run, the core is actually integrated into all of our programs now, so we don't run a standalone core program. We run a heavy equipment operating program. So we've got 3 acres of land in our Osceola campus. I've got 5 pieces of equipment that they actually run on. I've got 4 heavy equipment simulators that they practice on. Just submitted plans, they're in the process right now to clear another 3 acres at another campus of ours so we can run a secondary heavy equipment program. Blew up, took off. It got children, or I say children, it got students interested into construction. Here's these giant Tonka toys that I get to go out and play with. And it was and Christina can contest to this, it took a little bit to convince the college, hey, I want to run bulldozers on your property. You know, they didn't jump on board right away, but if you get to know me, you'll know I'm not going to let it die. If I find out, I think every other conversation we had at the time, I'd say, well, that'd be a real good place to do heavy equipment. And they finally just got tired of me saying it. It was like, just do it, because I don't want to talk about it anymore. So that was kind of our first step outside of the core construction. And since then, we've been able to establish a full carpentry program. We have an apartment maintenance tech program, which where's my gentleman from, I can't ever say it right, is it Bahamas? Whatever, that one. But I can't say it, I try to screw it up all the time. Where's he at? Is he in here? Oh, there he is, all right. So our apartment maintenance tech class is very easily transferred over into a hotel maintenance class or engineering class. I mean, we're teaching them electrical, HVAC, drywall repair, plumbing repair, even things as simple as like window screen repair we go over in that class. So it very fits in perfectly with what the hotel industry and the resorts could do. Our most recent program we started was a power line technician program, so we trained linemen to work on the power grid. All right, they're going to work for companies like Duke Energy in Central Florida, Orlando Utility Commission, Kissimmee Utility Authority, Pike Energy. I mean, major companies that are in the United States are all over the East Coast. You know, so they're going out here, and these students, some of the students in our classes, they're coming out making more money than the instructors were that taught them that skill. Our apartment maintenance class, we have more jobs out there than I have students to give them right now. We have apartments from all over Central Florida that not only come to our program to look for students, but they come in to do guest speaking. They've donated materials to our programs and all that. So the reason I say this is for you guys to look at the big picture. We've been doing this, I was trying to figure it out, I think our first class was roughly about a year ago that I was down here. And last day I actually had to teach from back home because they kicked me out of the country because of COVID. And we've been trying, me and Mr. Darwin have been trying for months and months to get back down here, and just didn't work out. But hopefully, knock on wood, we are on the downhill side of this thing. And we'll be able to come back more and more and continue to teach this program. I have to give BTBI, Mr. Darville, Mr. Gabe, of course, President Dr. Robertson, and Miss Wiley. I won't forget Miss Wiley. Miss Wiley, she's the rock star. But I really have to give them, and of course the Board of Trustees for the BTBI, but you have to give them a pat on the back to take on a task of this magnitude, to come in really. They've been able to come into this with, open minds and say, hey, this is what we see in the Bahamas. And this is where, we have the skill set, we have the potential, and we can do this. I was actually reading an article just, I think it was last night actually, about it. Ever since I come to the Bahamas, I follow a couple news agencies on social media and things like that just to keep up with what you guys are doing down here. And I read an article last night about a gentleman that was from Jamaica that just got caught. I guess he stayed about a year over his welcome here in I think it was Nassau, I think is where he's at, and they caught him. And when they caught him, he was working carpentry work at a local business down here. And government agency comes in, they see him, where's your papers, don't have any, he's supposed to have left a year ago. And he's down here, and the whole time I'm reading this, I'm thinking, it's one of those things where, he said he just absolutely loved the Bahamas, and that's great. But I look at that and I say, well, that's taking money out of a Bahamian's pocket. That's taking food out of a Bahamian's family's mouth. I understand if you want to come here, that's fine, do it right, come over here. But in the meantime, it also speaks to what we're talking about when it comes to trade training. This gentleman, and he might have been great at what he does, but he had no credentials whatsoever. And he's working here, taking a job away from someone local. So with what we teach in this class for you guys is, most of you work in education, right? Let's show of hands, how many work in education currently? Okay, so we have some. How many work in the trades or have a trade? And how many of you, this is the first time you'll be teaching a class once you get through this training? All right, a couple of you, right? So for some of you that work in education, some of this might be refresher for you. The ones that work in the trades, this is going to take you as a tradesperson and give you a little bit of a showing of what our people in education do every day. So we're going to try to help you to gain those skills when it comes to teaching. Probably one of the most frustrating things for me coming from the trades into teaching was, in the trades, we are very production driven. All right, time is money. All right, the faster I get something done, the more money I make. All right. And so when going into the classroom and having to slow down and say, okay, this person's never done this before. All right. This person has done this 3 different times and they did it wrong 3 different times, and I'm ready to explode on the inside, but I can't do that. All right, I have to sit there and bite my tongue. And people in education, they know what I'm talking about because they do it every day, right? But you're ready. So I'm trying to show you how we can do that in a class. How do we manage a classroom? How do we manage time, right? Why is our classroom set up the way it is today, right? We could set this classroom as a big space. We could have put rows across, right? We could have done chevrons. We could have done anything to set this classroom up. Why do you think we set this classroom up the way that we did? Anybody have any ideas? Right? Well, it gives me a place in the center, right? To walk around and see everybody, but everybody is facing me. You're not staring, minus the people sitting in the center, which is not normally set up like this, but you're not staring at the back of someone's head. I can control this room, right? Mr. Darwell likes to talk all the time. Can't get him to stop talking, right? So he's over here talking to Miss Wiley, and they're having their side conversation while I'm trying to teach. Well, for me, if I want them to be quiet without me coming off as a jerk, I just come over here and teach for a few minutes. I continue on with my lecture. I continue on with my setup. Mr. Darwell feels bad, he stops talking, right? Then I walk back over here and I continue doing what I'm doing. I can control the room this way. If I want to set up a demonstration, I have this whole room in the middle to do that, and everybody gets to see it. right? Simple things like that. It's not because, hey, we got X amount of tables, let's set them up in this fashion. There's a purpose behind it, and we'll go over that in class today as well. So, before we get started into the actual content, I want to, first I'll open it up to anybody has any questions, concerns of they're going to be learning in class today. And second, I want to challenge you all with one thing, and this is what I challenge my instructors to do. When it comes to the trade programs, I challenge my instructors, I want 90% of the time that we're teaching for it to be hands-on. Right? I know you've got X amount of slides you need to go through, have tests that we need to do. How do you make that work? I want you to think outside the box when you're delivering this information to your students. Your students are coming to these programs, 99% of the students coming to these programs are there because they want to learn hands-on. They do not want to sit in a classroom and listen to lecture all day long. Right? So if they're there for trades, to learn a hands-on skill, why would I teach them in a way that they're not able to learn from? All right, we'll do a show of hands real quick, and this is another slide that we'll get to later today. How many of the students here think that they can read a book and learn more out of reading a book than that's the best way for them to learn? All right, we got one, maybe two, handful. What about if you were to listen, not reading a book, just listen to the lecture, and you learn best by listening to the lecture? All right, one, two, maybe. Okay. How many of you learn by watching? And if I would come up here and demonstrate how to do something, that is the best way for you to learn. Right? Hands on. Now, how many of you learn best by coming up here and actually doing it yourself? Right. So the truth is that we're going to mix all of those together. It can't always be me demonstrating. It can't always be you doing. We have to mix those together, right? I have to give a little bit of lecture, right? You'll retain about 10% of what I say, right? You'll retain roughly about 10% of what you read in a book, right? You'll retain about 50% of what you do, right? When we start adding all these together, you get to retain about 90% of everything. So if you do a little bit of reading, a little bit of lecture, a little bit of watching, and a little bit of actual hands-on, when it all comes down to it, you'll retain 90% of that by doing all of those. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to introduce these into our classrooms. All right. So we talked a little bit of some of you work in high schools, junior highs, I heard. Some of you will be coming in as trade instructors, probably into those scenarios. You can, that's a golden opportunity, I think, in that level to work with a child and develop them on a path. That is a perfect age where you can, for lack of a better term, save that person from a path that maybe they're not supposed to go down. If they're troublemakers in your classroom, most of the time students don't pay attention in the classroom because they're bored, they don't learn the way that we teach, right? It's not that they're bad kids. Some of them aren't, but not all of them. But it's not that they're bad, it's that they don't learn the way that we teach, right? We think about it all the time, you know, we haven't changed how we've taught education for hundreds of years. For this time, actually, with this pandemic, it's probably the first time we've ever thought outside the box. And said, hey, we still got to educate, so let's go through Zoom. And someone mentioned it earlier, and I honestly think, especially where we're from in Orlando, we've had such overcrowding of schools that I really think this is something that is going to stick with us even after the pandemic's over. It's going to give them opportunity to say, okay, you learn from home, or you have the choice to come in person or stay at home. And we'll be able to kind of fulfill those needs that we need for the schools. We don't have enough schools to house the amount of people that are moving into the area. We get about 1,000 people a day moving to Central Florida. All right. So that doesn't take very long when you look at those numbers to say how much a school gets overcrowded, and they're building new schools. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a new elementary school popping up. About every little neighborhood almost has their own elementary school. All right, but then they funnel from 10 elementary schools, funnel down to 1 junior high, or to 2 junior highs, and then funnel down to 1 high school. So by the time you get to high school, most of the schools probably in Orange County have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 students in them for every high school, right? So it doesn't take long for that to be an issue, you know, so I could really see how this technology is going to be used in the future. But, you know, as horrible as COVID has been to everybody and for the people that's lost it, we've learned a lot of things out of it. We've been able to, I remember we were talking about it the other day, me and Christina, and I said, you know, before, if I had a meeting at one of my other campuses, you know, I would have to schedule 30 minutes of drive time, 45 minutes of drive time to get to that campus, to have the meeting, 45 minutes back, all right? It'd take me 3 hours to do an hour meeting, which most of us all know can be handled over an email. But now, I use Zoom all the time. We use that excuse, oh, social distancing. I can't go down there. I'm just let's make it a Zoom meeting, you know, to be safe. But it's really, I don't want to drive down there. All right, so I could definitely see that continuing on. It saves me a lot of time, a lot of money. Saves the college a lot of money as well. So, we're going to start off on our very first chapter. It's very simple. It's just an introduction to NCCER. Right? I had a young lady come up to me and ask me, what does the NCCER stand for? When we went on our break, right? And it actually stands for the National Center for Construction, Education, and Research. Yes? Yeah, go ahead. Got to turn it on. Oh, y'all was about to get a certification. Y'all didn't even know it. Y'all was about to get sent through it all.
As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. John F. Kennedy. The Technical Studies Unit of the Korean Technical Education section of the Department of Education would like to express our sincere gratitude to BTVI and Valencia College for offering the NCCER craft certification to our teachers. This partnership is just the beginning to ensuring that all students throughout the entire archipelago have access to technical education and international certification by our trained teachers. To Mr. Franco Johnson, Subject Coordinator at Doris Johnson, thank you for invoking the presence of our Lord and Savior in your opening prayer. It is with his strength that we can do all things. To Mrs. O'Brien, we thank you for making us feel welcome. To Mr. Darville, who has been working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that this workshop became a reality, we say thank you for your brief overview of NCCER and why we are all here today. To Dr. Robertson, your remarks gave insight into the ongoing partnership between BTVI and the Ministry of Education, and your commitment to growing career and technical education in the Bahamas. For this, we are forever grateful. To our facilitator, Mark Hughes, we look forward to you sharing your knowledge and skills with us during the next 4 days, and we anticipate leaving here enriched, exposed, and most importantly, certified. We thank you for your insight and words of wisdom. To our Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, we thank you for believing in the importance of CTE and the ongoing training of our teachers so that we can remain competitive in an ever-changing world. Your words evoked emotion and expressed your support and commitment to technical studies. We thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us this morning and officially open this workshop. To our invited guests, we thank you for taking time from your schedule to come and share in this occasion. We also extend gratitude to our private sponsors and partners, and it is through these partnerships that we continue to take CTE to the next level. To our congenial moderator, the marvelous, magnificent Mrs. O'Brien, who has kept everything flowing this morning. Thank you for organizing this opening ceremony and for being the most gracious host. Finally, to you, the teachers who will be participating in this workshop. Daniel J. Borston once said, "Education is learning what you didn't even know you didn't know." Embrace this workshop with open minds and take advantage of this opportunity given to you by our gracious hosts, BTVI. Thank you and good morning.
One more. One word. One word. One word. Just look at somebody, look in somebody's direction, and one word. One word. Good. And as you continue to clap, I want you to allow our special guest to leave. And so clap. Thank you very much for the honor of your presence. Thank you very much. We appreciate you very much. Thank you to our media. We love you. Hello from the other side. Beautiful. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask the males. I'm going to ask the honorable men in the room to stand quickly for me. And I'm going to ask that you engage your muscles, please, to just quickly stack the chairs and put them in the back so Mark can just freely begin his session. Honorable men? No, just grab a chair and come there. Persons who are around the table. So we're going to be at the table using the computers. So at the back where the media personnel was at, you can actually use that table and those chairs there. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. We are so honored to have great men in our midst. We appreciate that. What? Oh, under there. Moxie, any of those chairs in the back? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much, honorable men. We appreciate your assistance just now, and I am going to turn this over to Mark, and you can make it official.
All right. So we've got a couple things we're going to be doing in the meantime while we're going over our first set of slides. You should all have filled out a release form for NCCER, and you should have put your National Bahamas insurance number on that, correct? And then also a responsibility and form that you should have read over and signed as well. If you have not done that, just raise your hand. We'll get you a form sent around. We'll need that to create your NCCER card number, which you will use for testing purposes throughout the duration of this program. Okay. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is just the introduction to NCCER and the workforce development system. Every one of NCCER's chapters or sections is going to be set up very similar to this. Mr. Darwell mentioned it earlier that everything's kind of put together for you, and it's all put together in a nice little bow, and it's delivered to you, and you're good to go. For some of you that are new to education, you don't have to create content. The content is already created for you. You can elaborate on that content. You can add to that content, right? If you want to extend on it, you can. You just can't take away from it, right? But it's all going to put together. And every one of our chapters, even in the craft fields, are going to be set up very similar. The very first slide you're going to come to is going to talk about what our objectives are for this module. All right, so for this one, it's going to be to describe NCCER and its training assessment program. Mr. Darwell mentioned it earlier. Have a lot of people in the Bahamas that have a lot of skills. They do not have that certification to go along with it. NCCER has an assessment program where we can test that individual out, and if they pass that written examination and the practical examination, then we can certify them as that craft professional, whether it be welding or electrical or plumbing or whatever the case may be. So we have the assessment side, and then we have the training side. We're starting out in the Bahamas on the training side, but very soon we want to move into the assessment side for the individuals. Some of you as instructors might have that same thing going on. Some of you might have years of experience at a skill level to do it, but you technically don't have the card that goes along with it. Well, I want to be able to get you that card as well. So you have something personal for you that show your credentials in case you ever do go to find another job somewhere else. It's not just bringing over a resume, which we all know we can put whatever we want to on a resume. Right? We have something that proves that we know what to do. We're going to describe the history and the mission of NCCER and describe the purpose and benefits of NCCER's standardized training program. Identify the qualities and basic responsibilities of an NCCER instructor. Identify special training and certification programs offered by NCCER, and describe the purpose and benefits of NCCER's National Craft Assessment and Certification Program. Second objective is define workforce development and its role in the construction industry. Define workforce development, describe the effects of the skilled workforce shortage on the construction industry, and describe how NCCER programs and resources directly support workforce development. In the United States, and it's not necessarily even limited to the United States, there is a shortage of craft workers around the country. Matter of fact, we run a CDL truck driving program at our school where people can learn to drive semis, commercial vehicles. And just received a article the other day that in the United States, there's going to be there's a possibility of having a gasoline shortage this summer across the United States. Not because there's not enough gasoline, it's because they don't have enough drivers that have their hazmat certification to deliver that fuel to the gas station. Right? 65,000 people in the commercial truck driving industry last year failed drug tests and lost their CEOs. 65,000 individuals. Right? We're worried about COVID-19 as a pandemic, and I see another pandemic on the rise that we haven't even been concerned to start to address yet. Right? It's what happens when food doesn't get to the grocery stores? What happens when fuel doesn't get to the gas stations? Right? The amount of people I told you moving in Central Florida every day, 1,000 people every day in Central Florida. Right? Right now, you can't throw a rock without hitting a construction site in Central Florida, whether it be residential, commercial, or civil. Roads are being widened, brand new roads are being created, housing developments are popping up left and right. Right? Matter of fact, just read this the other day, it used to be 1 in 10 houses bought in the United States was new construction. So for every 10 houses bought, 1 of them was brand new construction, 9 of them were existing construction that were bought. It is down to 1 in 4 now. 1 in 4 houses is built brand new because there's not enough existing houses. Right? Well, does anybody follow lumber prices, for instance? Lumber has risen by 324% from this time last year. I went out the other day to Home Depot. 1 sheet of 1/2-inch outdoor plywood was $70. That's my price in the U.S. What's your price over here? 140 bucks? Probably. A 2x4? 1 2x4? $8. Right? 8 foot length. 2x4 by 8 is $8. Pine, not treated. Not treated, just pine. The 4x4 treated 4x4s were $30 a piece. Right? It's the shortage. Now, when you start coming back and looking at that, it all comes back to, it does tie in a little bit with COVID, right? But it ties into the transportation shortage that we have to haul the stuff, right? It ties into the fact that they're probably not selling as much lumber, even though there's a lot of construction going on. They don't have the carpenters to put it up, right? So they don't want to flood the market with lumber because then, you know, the price of their material is just bottomed out. So they cut back on their side saying, I'm not going to flood the market with it, we'll just charge more for it. And when we see the demand, we'll produce more material, right? So it all does kind of tie back in together of what the shortage of the trades are. Where's my electricians at? Anybody? Right? Copper. Copper is more than doubled in price for new copper. So copper wiring for residents, skyrocket. Welders, steel went up. I think it's more than doubled in price, maybe even tripled in price because of all this, right? So the reason I bring that up for you guys is it's a challenge all the way around. You guys are going to be going into the field of teaching these trade programs. You need materials to teach, right? Luckily, we're lucky enough here in the Bahamas that tuition is covered, but you need materials, right? So one of the things that we've been able to do throughout the years in our programs is really develop partnerships with these hiring, or with these construction companies, right? They buy in bulk for the most part. So they can reduce your price a little bit there if you work out a deal where you can buy things through them. You've been able to produce good quality students to give them good quality employees. They want to hire more of your students. They're more willing to do favors for you and get you the things that they need when they have extras, right? when they have cut-off pieces that are, they normally would throw away that we could actually use in our programs. All right, so develop those relationships. We'll talk a little bit, of course, our first acronym was NCCER. I told you it stands for National Center for Construction Education and Research. We'll talk a few more acronyms over the course of this program. The AAC, which is an accredited assessment center. You're going to hear me talk about exam and assessments. And they're two different things. When I talk about assessments, I want you to think of existing employees, existing personnel that have those skills already. We are going to assess those skills and give them opportunity to earn that certification through assessments. So an AAC is an accredited assessment center. This is something me and Mr. Darwell talked about, maybe bringing this down to the Bahamas and creating an AAC down here so we can go ahead and test out our existing workforce. You have ATEF, an accredited training and educational facility. That could be a high school, it could be a middle school, it could be BTBI. All right. It's an accredited training and education facility. It's a good certification to have. That means you can kind of manage your own paperwork, right? But you can't manage other people, all right? That is where your ATS comes in. ATS is an accredited training sponsor. That's what we are at Valencia. You would probably on your paperwork, the very top line, it said something like ATS with a slash, and most of you probably left it blank because what is an ATS, right? Well, ATS is our accredited training sponsor. That means that with us, we went through the process to become an ATS, went through the paperwork process, filled out, paid the fees and all that stuff. We met the criteria to become an ATS, and it gives us the ability to be able to work with BTBI and train you guys as certified craft instructors. You'll see the CSSP, Construction Site Safety Program. In the core curriculum, they're going to go through a safety module. That is module 1 actually in the core. And it actually meets all criteria that OSHA 10 in the United States 1926, which is the construction standard for OSHA, it meets all criteria for that. It's the exact same content. The reason it can't be issued an OSHA card is because you have to be an instructor to be able to do that. So your students will come out of that program with a construction site safety certification along with their core certification. If you have someone that is an OSHA 10 instructor and they teach that course, they can actually issue out the OSHA 10 cards as well. The ICTP, which is your instructor certification training program, that is what you guys are going through right now. All right. The MTICTP is the Master Trainer Instructor Certification Program. That is the program that I went through to be able to teach you guys the ICTP. And that's something that Mr. Darwell is going to be going through probably very shortly. NCCER, National Craft Assessment Certification Program. OQ, Operator Qualifications. PTAP, Pipeline Training Assessment Program. SME, Subject Matter Experts, and TU as a training unit. So these are just some of the acronyms that you're going to see us talk about, and you don't have to remember them right now. I will bring them back up and we'll talk about them more and more throughout the program. So yes. Yep. Yeah, if you want to, he probably sent you a Zoom link. If you can't see the slides, you're more than welcome to log on to Zoom and look at it as well. What's that? For Wi-Fi? Oh, he probably sent you an email. Yeah, it's probably in your email. Okay. All right. I'll give him just a second. All right, so we're going to talk about NCCER. They are a nonprofit 501c3 education foundation. You will probably see that on your first test, that they are a 501c3 education foundation. All right, means 501c3 education foundation. So they are not for profit. NCCER works to develop this curriculum with subject matter experts from all over the United States. Major construction companies, construction owners, craft professionals. They usually revise their curriculum depending on what the craft is based off of needs. Me and Mr. Darwell just had this conversation the other day. They just put out a brand new version, I think the 6th edition of the core curriculum. They come out with a new electrical book about a year ago now, I think, for our electricians. They come out with a brand new series on concrete construction, if anybody's into concrete. They came out with a brand new series of books for that as well. They don't sell the books. They produce the books. Pearson sells the books, and that's kind of where they're at with what NCCER does. So just remember, they are a 501c3 education foundation. So they were formed by leading industry contractors, right? They start with 5 crafts when they first come into this, and the purpose was to develop standardized training, right? I don't know how it is with the family islands, but you guys probably know, like, if you meet someone, can you tell what island they're from after talking to them for a few minutes? Sometimes, right? Well, same thing in the United States, right? Half the people I work with can't understand what I'm saying because I have an accent. I'm a hillbilly, right, from West Virginia, right? It's the greatest, that's God's country. He loves that place. But I moved to Florida and they don't know how to talk down there, right? They don't know how to speak what I would call proper English, right? So, real quick, when first thing people ask me, I thought, where are you from? All right, you ain't from here, right? And they're right. All right, but we have different dialects as well. Yes, sir. Yep. What's your area of expertise? Huh? Auto mechanics. The core will go into auto mechanics, but NCCER does not have an auto mechanic level 1. Yeah. Yep. It'll connect to all that. But we have standardized training. They wanted to say, if you learn this craft in California, and you learned it in Florida, and you learned it in Nassau, it should be the same curriculum. The language should be the same, right? When you work in construction, we kind of have nicknames for things, right? If I told okay, you're in auto mechanics. If I told you to get me a pair of channel locks, what are you gonna get me? No, that's good. Okay, but if I say channel locks, you know what channel locks are, right? Well, channel locks, it's the brand name. It's not the name of the tool. But if I tell you to give me a set of channel locks, you're going to give me a set of adjusting pliers, because that's the actual proper name of adjusting pliers. Or if I said welding, right? If I told you, give me a set of vice grips, right? Vice grips is the name brand of a tool, but we know that as locking pliers, right? But if I told you, hey, I need a set of vice grips, you're probably going to bring me the right tool, depending on what part of the country you're from, right? It just depends on where you're from and how you learn it. So that standardized training is why NCCER come about. I said, hey, from the north to the south to the east to the west, right? They're all learning pretty much the same thing, but it's different. Now, how we build houses is different depending on what part of the country you're from too. Who's my carpenters in here? Anybody? My carpenters? Okay, so I can lie about carpenters. Okay, there you go. All right, so carpenters. The way we build houses in Florida is they come in, they pour a concrete foundation. They come in, treated lumber, they tap into that concrete, and they come up with either block, right? And And the interior, we use tree lumber, but the outside is made of cinder block. And then the second floor, we do wood from the second floor up, right, if it's a two-story house. Well, where I'm from, West Virginia, the only thing we use block for is the foundation. We dig into the ground, we call them footers. We dig the footers in the ground, we pour concrete with rebar into the ground. That makes a nice concrete footer. We come up with block, then we put a sill plate on it, a toe board, we put floor joists across it, we deck it, and then we come up with lumber, right? Why do we do that there versus how we build houses in Florida, right? It's because it's the weather, right? It don't freeze in Florida very often, right? But back home it gets down to negative degrees, right? So when you pour concrete in West Virginia for a foundation, it has to be below the ground at least 18 inches because that's the freeze line or the frost line, what they call it. So the ground will actually freeze solid up to 18 inches. So the concrete has to be below that, so because what happens when the ground freezes, it contracts, right? It expands and contracts. It'll crack your foundation, right? You don't have to worry about that in Florida. Now we got sinkholes in Florida, so that kind of defeats the purpose there too, right? But it's different. So you might be a carpenter in Florida and you have those skills, but if I told you to build a house in West Virginia, you might be completely lost because you wouldn't know how to get started, right? Anybody do concrete work here? Anybody know that? A little bit on the side. Ever set up batter boards? What they call batter boards? Right? You don't see that hardly anymore. Now it's all GPS, right? Back in the day, we set up batter boards, we made 90-degree angles, we string a line, and that's how we can tell that the house is somewhere all square on the property, right? Now it's all done by GPS. Depending on what companies you work for, you know, you might work for a company, Lane Construction, which is a huge company back home. They do a lot of road work. They're actually a worldwide company now. But anywhere on the East Coast, all the way to Texas, Lane Construction does civil jobs, new road construction for bridges, whatever the case may be. They are using GPS, right? They're going to come in and use GPS to see what their elevation is on the ground. Well, John Smith Construction probably doesn't have the money to buy GPS. Right? I know for us, we looked at the GPS system for my dozer, it was $100,000. Right? Most people don't have that kind of money laying around to turn around and buy a GPS system, even though they're doing the same thing. Right? But knowing what that is, knowing how that is done, that's where the standardized training comes into effect. Right? Our mission at NCCER is to build a safe, productive, and sustainable workforce of craft professionals. Right? That standardization of training we talked about it's got 3 essential characteristics of NCCER curriculum, and it's standardized, competency-based, and task-driven. Right? Every test that your student, most of the tests that your students will take will have a written examination or computer-based examination and a practical application. So again, I could read, let's say I read a book on brain surgery, right? I read it cover to cover, front to back, I know it inside and out. I go take a test, pass it. You gonna let me do brain surgery on you? No, right? No. All right? That's not how life works, right? If that was the case, we'd have a lot of people being doctors. But they want to see, can you actually do the job? So, my welders, they're going to take a test on TIG welding or MIG welding, right? They might want to know what type of gases are used, what the pressures are, whatever the case may be. And that's fine. They're going to take that written test and they might score 100% of it. The next thing we'll do is you're going to say, go set up that TIG machine. Make sure the gases are on the right pressure, and can you weld this in multiple positions? And guess what? They can do that, but they can't pass the test. They don't get certified. Oh, you pass the test, but you can't actually do the job, you don't get certified. You have to be able to pass both of them. You have to prove to the curriculum proctor and the performance evaluator that I know how to do this job. And that's very important.
tell my instructors all the time, I tell my students all the time, I am not in the business of giving out certificates. If you don't earn them, I'm not giving them to you. I don't give anything you earn, right? Because that card has to mean something. If every person comes through your class, you give them a card, and they didn't earn it, and they go out into the field, and now they're saying that I went to BTVI, and he taught me, what's your name, sir? Dwayne. And he come to BTVI, well, Dwayne and Mr. Gray taught me this, all right? And now they're out there representing you, and they're going to get fired. Now the next person that comes in that actually went through your class, that actually learned it, and actually earned that, tries to get a job, I'm like, I ain't hiring that. I seen what the last one did for Mr. Gray's class, right? That card means nothing at that point, right? If everybody gets a trophy, that trophy don't mean anything, right? Yes, sir. No, they don't have to be OSHA trained. So she asked if the students are OSHA trained before they come into this program. They do not have to be OSHA trained. The site safety certification, the very first module we'll go through in 4, meets the criteria for OSHA 10. So it's a safety. So when they see it, this construction site safety certification is equivalent to the OSHA 10. All right. I would highly recommend, we add OSHA 10 in our programs anyways, even though they go through this, our students actually come out when, I'll take heavy equipment for instance, they go through construction safety in core, they do OSHA 10 as homework, and then they go back through a heavy equipment safety program through that. So they actually hit safety 3 different times as an actual module or actual training in our programs. And if you don't have an OSHA 10 instructor, don't panic. You can do it online. You can have your students do it online. It's $25 a person. Right? So if you don't have somebody in the country that can do OSHA 10 certification, you can go through different organizations. We actually went that way. I have a couple OSHA instructors that would teach it in person, but it takes time out of the class. So I do it as homework. We buy them vouchers online. They get issued a voucher number on the first day of class. I get a printout that says go to this website, log on, here's your login credential. This is homework, it's due by this date. Right? Because it puts a little skip on them and makes them have to do a little bit. We actually moved all of our core that you guys will be teaching. We actually just recently moved that to all homework for our students. So now when you come to heavy equipment class, the very first module you do is safety. We do keep that one in person, but the other 8 modules we move to online training. Because you came to the program to be a heavy equipment operator, right? I need you to go through core because it's a prereq to get into any other levels, but your goal is to be a heavy equipment operator. So it made more sense to me to spend more time running heavy equipment in class than it did to, let's talk about power tools and hand tools for a day or 2 days, when really you're there to run heavy equipment. They still go over it, they have to go through the homework. They read modules online, they watch videos online, they have to do a couple different practice assessments online, and then they have to test in person. But it's been able to get us to where they're focusing on that actual trade that they're there for. Yeah. It depends on what you're doing. So OSHA is a very broad book, right? So you really have 2 OSHA 10s. You have OSHA 10 1926, which is the construction industry, and then you have OSHA 10 general industry, which is for everybody else. So if you work at Burger King, technically you're supposed to go through OSHA 10 general industry, right? Because they're talking about fire suppression, talking about trips, slips, and hazards. But when it comes to 1926, subpart 1926 of OSHA 10 is based around construction. It talks about the fatal 4, right? So when you look at these 4 parts is what causes the majority of the deaths and accidents in construction. But then you can actually get into even more. So let's say my power line students, they do OSHA 10 ET&D, which is electrical transmission and distribution, which is a subpart of OSHA 10. So OSHA, when you look at OSHA, it's a very broad book, but 99.9% of the contractors out there are going to require OSHA 10 1926. everybody else general. If you work in a hair salon, you're supposed to take OSHA 10 general industry. Right? It's all there. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. Right. And you're not, most construction sites in Florida, across the United States, you're not gonna, if you don't have OSHA 10 coming on the site, they're gonna make you take OSHA 10 before they put you out on the job site. It's not so much that I have this dire love for you and I don't want you to get hurt. It just should be that way, but it's not. It's more about insurance purposes for them, workers' comp insurance. That way they can say, everybody that works on my job site is OSHA 10 certified. And it's just the truth of the matter. That's what it is. The standardization performance testing. Again, I told you, they're going to take a written / computer examination. I say it that way because technically you can still take a written examination, but on August 1st it has to be computer based. So we didn't even do written tests for none of the last class, so I want you guys to get used to that computer based testing. So they're going to take that, but then they're going to take performance testing. And it aligns with the national standards for apprenticeship programs. And it is a module format. It has to be taught by an NCCER certified instructor. The performance testing, again, it is very subjective to the performance evaluator. There's no black and white, you did this exactly like step, 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 step. It is more of a, sorry, the background's got me all screwed up. So it's more of a, I'm a carpenter, or I'm an auto mechanic, or I'm a welder. Is this to the standard that I see set forth? Right? And if they fail it, they have a chance to redo it. There is no limit on how many times they can do the performance evaluation. Now, what I would recommend, and I know Mr. Darwood and the team over at BTI has looked into this, but if it takes you 20 times to figure out that well, I don't know if I really want to sign off on that or not, right? I don't know if I want my name attached to that. So you might want to put a standard of, hey, if you tell them to change the oil, they pull the transmission plug 6 times, there's a problem there, right? You have a question? Yeah. So, well, you've got to think of it this way. So performance testing is pass-fail. So when it comes to performance testing, it's pass-fail. When it comes to the actual written examination, right, you technically don't even have to offer makeup exams for them. You take it one time, you fail it, sorry about your luck. Right? I don't recommend doing that, obviously, but I also don't recommend letting them take it 20 times. We have a standard that we put into place that they have 3 opportunities to take that test. If they fail that test after 3 opportunities, couple things. If they fail after the 3rd time they fail, I make them take a written test and prove to me that they know how to pass that test before I put them in the computer lab. It doesn't mean anything. They pass the written test, I grade it. If they pass it, then I will let them take a 4th time. After they wrote me a letter explaining to me why they need to take it a 4th time. Right? But after that, it's done. And it's not to be mean, it's not to control. The reason we really started doing that was to control the cost of the program, because I got charged for every time they took a test, whether it was a makeup test or not. So you do what you're supposed to do, and you take all 9 of your exams and you pass, you cost me $40, right? You didn't do what you're supposed to do, and it took you 3 times to pass each test, and now you cost me $180, right? But at the end of the day, you come out with the same card as this person does. Now, that's just how life is. I mean, welders, you have welders that are really good welders, you got some that are, they say they're welders, and you probably want to stay away from them, right? So the skill level out on the job site, they're going to prove themselves. But I'm not here to fail people, right? And I kind of look at it this way. I had a class the other day that it was a trench class that we, trench certification for trench safety, right? And I think I had 13 students take it, and 3 people got certified in it. And my instructor at the time was, well, they just weren't paying attention, and going off. And I tell them, like, here's the thing, with my job, when I look at that, that's not a student problem, that's a teacher problem. When the majority of your class does not pass that exam, it's because you didn't do your job and find a way to educate them that best fits their needs. Or, if they were talking the whole time, you didn't do your job at controlling your classroom. You didn't do your job. Now, if I run that same test back and 3 people fail, that's not necessarily an instructor issue, right? That means that student, those 3 students didn't do what they were supposed to do. So, but that standardization of those tests, what your students take down here in the Bahamas will be the exact same test that our students take at Orlando, at Valencia. Will be the exact same test they take at California. If they're taking welding 1 from you, it's going to be the exact same content, exact same test. Right? Now, what you teach them in that hands-on portion, that's always going to be subjected to that instructor when your skill level or how far you take it. But when it comes to that standardization, it's the same thing. So your students could leave the Bahamas and say, you know what?
I got the switch on break.
Got an opportunity, I'm going to move to Texas. Go work on an oil rig as a welder. When they walk in there, that certification means the same. They're not coming to you and say, oh, well, you took that in the Bahamas, so it's not the same as if you would have took it over here. It's a standardized certification. Yes?
You can go. Pardon me? You can go hard wire or wireless. No, you open on this. Okay. Yeah. You saw if we couldn't go bring the switch over because they cut me out of you myself. Yeah, I understand. With the Wi-Fi, I'm gonna go to the same source. How much one of these? It's a 200 gig. It's for 196. Plus with the plan and the device. How much is the plan from separate from the device? It depends on what you put together with the 200 gig. With the, I didn't have to have the calls every month. But we got this one is pay as you go. So if you don't use it, it's fine. But these could only handle up to 15. So they tend to get 2. So we can make sure I have one. Okay, so if it's split. Perfect. So let me get the password for this one. Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Okay.
Yes.
At this point, do we reconcile capability with confidence knowledge? Speaking of that point of one person having 2 chances to pass and the other one is passing.
Yes.
Well, it's always a case-by-case basis, because here's the truth of the matter, is most people that do craft professions, they probably don't do very good on standardized testing.
So once
Right?
you
This person might be an electrician. We all know, we all have